Hello, everyone. Welcome to new members, new roles, and newish friends. My name is Lacy Ellinwood, and I'm the Library Development Director here at the Mississippi Library Commission, and I also serve as the Friends Liaison to the State Friends of Mississippi Libraries. In today's presentation, we will be discussing how to create more effective boards and bylaws, how to improve your board meetings for friends, and barriers to friending millennials. I'll share some fresh engagement ideas and some tips on virtual fundraising as well. So what needs to be done for your friends group each year? Well, your friends need to renew their annual membership with the State Friends of Mississippi Libraries. The deadline for this is May 15th, and this usually occurs each year. You can see the breakdown for each group based on size. With that membership form, there are some annual activity report questions that are located on that form. In addition to that, the Friends groups across the state of Mississippi have record-keeping requirements per the Mississippi Code, sections 79-11-283. They are also required to file with the IRS with the 990 e-postcard, and the deadline for this is also May 15th. This form is sent out to friends each year and is also located on the Mississippi Library Commission website under Library Development. This is from the Friends of Connecticut Libraries and is also located on the American Library Association webpage for Friends, United for Libraries. As you can see, this chart breaks down the roles of the library director, the library board, and the Friends, and can really help Friends groups navigate where they fit in the library. So what exactly do Friends do for the library, and where do they fit in? While the library director administers the daily operations of the library and acts as an advisor to the Friends Board, the Friends support the policies set by the library and are there to support the services that the library provides to the local community. When it comes to funds for the library board seeks adequate funds to carry out library operations, while the library director prepares an annual budget based on the funds received for those library operations. The Friends fundraising efforts support the plans and mission of the library. The funds that the Friends receive should not be used for general operational costs of the library. All advocacy efforts should be coordinated between the library board, the library director, and the Friends. And we'll be talking a little bit more about advocacy later. Next, we'll be discussing creating effective boards and bylaws, including conflict of interest, term limits, fiduciary duties or financial duties, and diversity on the board. Bylaws are the governing document for your Friends group. They really tackle the big picture. They serve as a roadmap for operating and legal compliance for your Friends group. They cover how many members are on the board for the Friends, and a quorum is considered a majority. For example, if you have a 5-person board for your Friends group, then the majority or the quorum for your Friends group to conduct business would be 3 members. Now, take into consideration the makeup of your community, whether or not you need a large board with many members to run committees and to do large fundraising efforts, or if a small board would be more amenable to your community. A small board can have large workloads, but can be more focused in meetings, whereas a large board can cause quorum issues if members aren't engaged in your Friends group. And on the positive side of having a larger board, you do have a wider social network to pull from. So let's go over conflict of interest, policy, and procedure. No board member of a Friends of the library group shall derive any personal benefit or gain directly or indirectly by participating with the Friends of the library. Each individual Friends member should disclose to the board any personal interest they may have in a matter pending before the board and shall refrain from participation in discussion on that matter. It's really all about transparency and being upfront about any potential conflict of interest you may have as a Friends member on any voting procedure that is coming before your board. And this leads us to a discussion on term limits. So term limits allow for new members to step into board positions. They allow for new ideas and lessen the burnout and drastic loss of institutional knowledge among your Friends group. If you have the same Friends president for, let's say, the last 15 years, it's safe to say that that person has a lot of institutional knowledge. And if they were to win the lottery and walk out the door and never be seen on your Friends board again, that individual would be taking a substantial amount of institutional knowledge with them. So my recommendation when it comes to term limits is to set 2-year limits for your board positions and to have no more than 2 consecutive terms served before that individual takes a break from serving on the board. There are routine financial or fiduciary duties that your Friends group engage in. They formulate and approve an operating budget, and typically if your Friends group has been in operation for a number of years, they tend to have a good understanding of the annual amount of funding that is brought in each year. And this allows your Friends group to formulate and approve a potential operating budget for that year. Your treasurer should be monitoring income and expenses for your Friends group. There should be a review and approval of an end of the year financial report that is shared with the library director or a designated liaison from the library system to your Friends board. This is all about keeping an open line of communication between the library and the Friends group and vice versa. Friends groups are advised to maintain internal controls for appropriate procedures like check writing policies. They are encouraged to build and review a financial and fundraising plan to meet any goals set by the Friends group. And they should ensure timely filing of taxes. Again, we mentioned taxes earlier. This would be the 990 e-postcard unless your Friends group raises more than $50,000 in a year. In that instance, I would advise your Friends group to seek professional guidance from an accountant with filing their taxes for that year. Other fiduciary duties may include conducting an audit or providing information for an audit to your library system that your Friends support. This is not common, but it can happen. Let's talk more about the makeup of your Friends board. So when I mention diversity in this section of the presentation, what I'm really talking about is perspective, not just age, race, or socioeconomic status. But I will say that your Friends board, like your library, should reflect or represent the community in which it serves. So when you are thinking about diversity on your Friends board, consider the skill set that you need for success. What are your goals and what kind of members on your Friends board do you need to make those goals a reality? So you should review your board's abilities to identify any skill gaps that you may need to fill. I strongly recommend an onboard or orientation process for any new board members. This could be an orientation packet or a training that is provided to any new members. It should include what is expected when you join the Friends of the Library board, what that individual needs to be prepared to do. If there is a Friends handbook, the Friends group would get it at that time. A strategic plan if your Friends group has one. If they do not have a strategic plan, I would encourage the Friends to look at the library system strategic plan and see where the Friends fit in with the library strategic plan to make sure that the Friends are fulfilling the goals set out there. There should be a financial summary and minutes from the last 3 years included in that orientation packet. Ultimately, the goal of this onboarding process is to create sustainable boards. You want to have systems in place that help new members and build a group of people that are engaged in the process of being with the Friends. So consider running this easy activity with your current board to identify what areas you have vacancies, and then seek out members that can fill these during your next election. You could also advertise to fill these positions in a newsletter provided by the library or the Friends or a local paper in the community. In this example, you can see that the Friends wanted to have public relations, social media, fundraising and donor relations skills, as well as a connection to public schools and somebody who was really good with organizational processes. So currently they have a vacancy in their need for social media, as well as a connection to public schools. So during their next election, it would be recommended that they seek out or create an advertisement specifically requesting individuals with skills in social media and with public schools. So let's talk about better board meetings. So in this section, we'll be discussing notice of board meetings. We'll be discussing what's included in an agenda, running virtual meetings, as well as what should be and should not be included in your meeting minutes. So having and improving your board meetings can really help make the process of being a member of the Friends more enjoyable. It allows, again, for a more sustainable board. People continue to stay involved as long as the board meetings function in a timely and efficient manner. Notice. I recommend that Friends of the Library groups in Mississippi follow the open meetings laws that public library boards of trustees adhere to. These sections mentioned in the slide on the Mississippi Code also provide guidance on executive sessions. It would also be advised that Friends of the Library group follow Robert's Rules of Order as they serve to help guide meetings. My recommendation when it comes to providing notice for the Friends of the Library group is to post notice at least 1 week before the meeting. This allows members of the board time to prepare and to review any committee reports and create any sort of questions that they might have regarding those reports. If your group has a regular schedule, see about having it added to the library page or the events calendar for that library. Again, I recommend 1 week notice and sharing information to the board at least 1 week before. The packet to the board that goes out at least 1 week before the meeting should include an agenda. So what actually goes into an agenda? There is a call to order, an approval of the last month's minutes, reports oftentimes from the president of the board, as well as financial, and then any sort of committee reports that would need to be provided to the other members of the Friends board. These all should be read in advance, particularly with committee reports. It's important to include just highlights or updates in those sections. Other items included in the agenda are old business. These are past business items that are unresolved and maybe need further discussion or require a board vote. Then you have new business, and these are to be discussed and then have action points, meaning a vote potentially. They can always be tabled if more discussion is needed at the next board meeting. Then you will have comments, announcements, and other business. Other business could include any sort of special announcements, noteworthy accomplishments, and then time for public comment. I think it's very important for the Friends board to be able to congratulate any sort of volunteers that are involved with the Friends, as well as to provide support to any of the library staff that have assisted with the Friends on any sort of events. Everybody loves to hear a thank you every now and then. So there are two types of alternative agendas that can help boards run more efficiently. These would include a timed agenda and a consent agenda. So a timed agenda is very highly structured and breaks out time for each agenda item. This can really help the board chair or president control the meeting, and the chair can move on to the next item when time is up. This can pose problems if used for items that generate more discussion than anticipated, but you can always table the discussion if time runs out to the next board meeting when more time can be allotted. A timed agenda helps to prevent repetition of the same or similar ideas, as the board chair can point out that time is limited and that the opinion that is currently being expressed has already been shared. If it's not a regular, if it's not a regular or non-mandatory meeting where a vote isn't necessary, then having a timed agenda can help the other members of the board see that maybe their attendance isn't required because there are no major action items for that meeting. By setting out what will be discussed and for how long, it shows the members whether they are really crucial or not to the discussion. And then the second item that we'll be discussing is a consent agenda. And so this is an agenda that contains a packet of information or descriptions of proposed action items, all of which should be routine matters that are assumed to be non-controversial. So an agenda is sent to all of the board members before the meeting. If no one has any issues with the items presented in that packet, then they can be quickly approved in one vote. When I say routine items, what I mean there are things like meeting minutes, committee reports, and announcements. If there are any sorts of concerns from the board members upon reading that packet of information, it is their duty to bring it up as a discussion item before a vote happens to approve those items. Items that should not be included in a consent agenda are any items that the board should discuss as a whole. These could include things like amendments to the bylaws and who is elected to the board. The board should be wary of using consent agendas. It's only an efficient tool if it is used appropriately. Transparency and accountability are extremely important. All board members are responsible, like I mentioned, for reading and reviewing the items of the agenda before the meeting. If you don't speak up, then items will get approved, and that may not be in the best interest of your organization. Let's move on to virtual meetings. Like with in-person meetings, there should be advance notice of virtual meetings. The board must be engaged to be effective, and this means providing documents in advance for the board to review. There should still be an agenda, and I would recommend a consent agenda, especially for virtual meetings, to make those meetings as efficient as possible. We all have Zoom fatigue, and being on a virtual call with a board for more than 2 hours would definitely cause some of your board members to maybe not want to be as engaged. So a public body may conduct any meetings through teleconference or video means. A quorum of that Friends board must be present to conduct that meeting through teleconference means, and the equipment that is used should be in the place where the board typically meets. The notice of any special called meetings would still be provided, and all members should be able to hear and make comment on any of the discussion items. This would include if any members of the public would wish to take part in your Friends meeting. Now let's discuss meeting minutes. Minutes are an official record of the board meeting and can be used as legal evidence of the facts they report. So it's important that minutes are accurate and taken regularly. They provide information about when the meeting occurred and what action was taken during it. This includes motions, votes, and abstentions. So what must your meeting minutes include? Basic elements of good meeting minutes should include the name of the organization, the date and time of the meeting, board members in attendance, absent and excused. Any non-board members who attend the meeting, this would be maybe any sort of professional speakers you have, or maybe somebody that is coming to provide training to your board. Your minutes should include motions made and by whom, a brief summary of any debate, a statement of whether a quorum was present and the voting results. Reports and documents that are introduced are best attached to your meeting minutes instead of transcribed in your meeting minutes. Other items in your minutes may include further action items, the time the meeting ended, and then a signature of the secretary who usually takes the minutes. And it may also include the signature of another board member if your bylaws state so. What else is important is knowing what to omit from your meeting minutes. So minutes are not a transcript. They should be simply a record of the decisions made and the actions taken. Therefore, when a major debate or discussion is recorded, it is important only to include the major points for and against the issue. Keep the record keeper's opinions out of the minutes. It's really about sticking to the facts. It's important for individual board members to be able to have meaningful discussions without concern over individual liability. So my recommendation is that names or direct quotations in relation to a debate should not be recorded in your meeting minutes. You want to record discussions objectively and avoid inflammatory remarks and personal observations. A good way to do this is by avoiding adjectives and adverbs whenever possible. So what do you do with your meeting minutes after a meeting? After the minutes are written, they should be circulated to the board prior to the next board meeting. Members should review the minutes for any mistakes or missing information. If minor corrections can be made to the next meeting and approved, this can be part of a consent agenda. Otherwise, corrections can be addressed at the next meeting and any changes can be voted on at that time. Once finalized, the minutes are signed by the secretary and another officer if it's in your bylaws, and then filed away. The IRS has indicated in its compliance guides that meeting minutes for the Friends of the Library should be kept permanently. Let's move to new members. And I recently attended a training from the New York Library Association specifically about friending millennials. It's a big topic amongst Friends of the Library groups, and it's a question that I typically get when I provide training around the state. How do we get younger individuals involved in the Friends of the Library group? So for this presentation, my definition of millennials include those individuals born between the years of 1981 and 1997. You're looking at a millennial right here. And millennials have eclipsed boomers, believe it or not, and are the largest percentage of library users. So then the question can be asked, why are they so underrepresented in Friends of the Library boards? Because libraries have a mission that millennials do agree with and support. And they want to support the library for the same reasons as others. And we are not so self-serving as you may have read in some news articles. There are barriers for millennials to be involved in the Friends of the Library group. Millennials are career-minded and they tend to move often. They are less secular than previous generations, and it can be hard to find an in. Friends oftentimes have inconvenient meeting times, so I would encourage you to consider alternative meeting times, places, or taking it to a virtual meeting space. You need to make the time commitment worth it for millennials. And be aware of tokenism with any group or demographic when you're trying to create diversity on your board. You want to look at what the person can offer and not their persona. So don't get a millennial just to have a millennial on your board. See about what skill set they can offer your board. And think about our exercise from earlier. We had a vacancy with social media and a connection to public schools. A millennial may be able to be that connection to a public school and have skills in the social media realm. So where do you find millennials? Think about where parents are. Young parents may be at your story times. They may be involved in homeschool groups. You could also look at young professional groups as well as online. Eventbrite, Meetup, and LinkedIn are all places that you could recruit from to find millennials to be involved in your Friends of the Library group. So let's talk about Friends recruitment and retention. I would encourage you to write job descriptions for board positions and for volunteer positions that you're looking to fill for your Friends group. What are the tasks? What is the frequency of the work? And what are really the impacts of serving in that role? How would you explain these positions to a 5-year-old is a good adage to use. It really distills the position to a concise statement that is very direct for anyone to understand. And recruitment and retention are a cycle. So you really want to create a pipeline to get as many volunteers involved that can potentially turn into board members. I would encourage you to have an elevator speech, something like, I volunteer for the Friends for X reason to have Y impact. Consider utilizing mentors to help navigate the Friends board for new members. This is the old guard versus the new guard model that can often be a barrier for new members to be involved with your Friends group. Having mentors will lessen this mentality of an old guard versus a new guard. And remember that relationships are a two-way street. So while it may be a difficult time to communicate with a millennial, if you are a boomer, it can take some work from both parties to make that mentor relationship successful. By having a mentor type of program with your Friends group, it can allow you to follow up with new members after first meetings to explain any sort of oddities or to answer any questions for that person to make sure that they can stay engaged with being involved with your Friends board. And create options for volunteering, again, to really ease people into serving on your Friends board. Have one-time events, teen liaisons, and even casual conversations with patrons in the library can turn into future board members. So what is your elevator speech? I want you, as you are sitting watching this webinar, to take a few minutes and to write down what your elevator speech would be to an interested volunteer for the Friends. Again, I volunteer with the Friends for X reason to have Y impact. Once you have this crafted, you now have a tool to help you get your community more involved with your Friends of the Library group. So I know this was a big part of what everybody was waiting to hear, and I can't really keep from sharing some fresh engagement ideas with you all about Friends of the Library. So we will be going over virtual reunions, Friends After Dark, You Got Flamingoed, as well as covering some information regarding the Mississippi Humanities Council grants. So engagement ideas. Virtual reunions can allow members of your community to reconnect with Friends members that have moved away. Again, remember what I mentioned about millennials. We tend to move often, and this would be a good opportunity to keep that section of your community engaged with your Friends of the Library group. And hosting a virtual reunion is a good stepping stone if you're considering engaging in any sort of virtual fundraising. Friends After Dark can allow a younger task force of volunteers in your friends group to meet at a coffee shop or a bar after 7 o'clock because, as we discussed earlier, the traditional meeting times for Friends of the Library tend to be inconvenient for the millennial generation. And one of my favorite ideas that I've heard recently was a friends group using yard flamingos as a fundraising event, and members would pay to flamingo somebody's yard. And I would encourage maybe your friends to engage in this. For those that have a good sense of humor, maybe it is something that is done over a weekend during the summer to support summer reading. So it's a good opportunity to do something fun in your community and to support an essential program at your library. On this slide, I have also provided a recommended book that I would encourage all friends groups to either check out from their local library or to purchase from the American Library Association. It is called All Ages Welcome: Recruiting and Retaining Younger Generations for Library Boards, Friends Groups, and Foundations. And it is from the Friends arm of the American Library Association, United for Libraries. This moves us to the grants that are offered through the Mississippi Humanities Council. The Mississippi Humanities Council Grants Program seeks to fund projects that stimulate meaningful dialogue and to attract diverse audiences to their programs and to increase participation and engagement with the humanities through programs, exhibits, and larger projects such as productions in film, television, and radio. The Mississippi Humanities Council also offers special grants to support oral history projects around our state. So there are two types of grants that are offered through the Mississippi Humanities Council. The first one is what is referred to as a mini grant. So this is for projects that are funded up to $2,000. There are no deadlines. The only requirement is that applications must be received at least 6 weeks before the program or proposed grant period begins. The second type of grant that is mentioned in the slide are their regular grants, and these are for projects that are through $2,000 and up to $7,500. There are deadlines associated with the Mississippi Humanities Council regular grants, and those deadlines are May 1st and September 1st. It is very important if you are considering a Mississippi Humanities Council grant to work with your local library before you submit any grant application and to contact the Assistant Director for the Mississippi Humanities Council, Carol Anderson, to discuss your project and make sure it's a good fit for the Humanities Council. All Mississippi Humanities Council grants must be matched by cash or an in-kind contribution. The combined total of cash and in-kind contributions must be at least equal to the amount of the grant. And for those major grants, those over $2,000, there must be, part of that grant must be matched in cash. And that's really where the friends groups can kind of step in and help the library be that cash match. Next, we'll discuss some tips for virtual fundraising. Friends really had to pivot their fundraising efforts due to COVID-19, and I think that this change or this shift to virtual events and virtual fundraising may be a permanent change. So let's talk about virtual fundraisers for a minute. So there are some key questions that you are going to need to ask if you are going to have a virtual fundraiser. What do you want to accomplish? Again, tie this to your goals that are discussed with your friends board. And who are you trying to reach? Are you looking to engage new members, bring back old members? Are you trying to engage with teams or maybe local businesses in your community? Think about how you're going to tell the story of the library. Are these stories going to be community driven? Will they come from the library staff? It's a question that you're going to need to answer in order to have a successful virtual fundraiser. Will this fundraiser be a ticketed event or will it not be a ticketed event? Again, this is really tied to what are you trying to accomplish with this virtual fundraiser, and how are you going to do the fundraising ask? Think about those old school telethons on television. When you're thinking about a fundraising ask, is it something that you'll do on the front end through the event and then during the follow-up? Again, these are questions you're going to need to have answers to. And how are you going to make people feel connected, because it won't be an in-person event? And how are you going to bring those new people into the fold? All the answers to these questions will vary based on your event, the goals for your event, and the community that you serve. So what works? So some tips for things that work are, you're going to need to have a good facilitator for a virtual fundraising event. This individual will help attendees remain engaged and will assist in procuring donations during the event. Another positive aspect to doing a virtual fundraising event is that friends groups have reported it is easier to get some bigger named authors involved in their fundraising event, because these authors can do interviews easier remotely, or pre-record a book talk or something of that nature and send it in for the friends to use. We all have had virtual meetings with hiccups, so consider the technology side of things before the event. Some things you'll want to have answers to include, are you going to provide an access code to each person that is involved or registers for the event, or is it just going to be a general link that is sent to everybody that is participating in the virtual fundraising event? And have a troubleshooting plan, because issues will happen and you don't want to be caught off guard the day of an event with any sort of technology issues. Share information on accessing and using whatever sort of fundraising platform you are engaging with prior to the event with attendees. My recommendation here is to send out troubleshooting information at least a few days before your virtual fundraising event, so that people that are attending can maybe demo the platform before the event to make sure that they won't have any issues, for example, going into a Zoom meeting. You're going to want to email all the people involved in attending the fundraising event 24 hours ahead of the event, as well as 2 hours before the event, to ensure maximum participation. And be sure to include the access code and information for troubleshooting with each of those notifications. So how to ask and what is the value for a fundraising event? Are you going to require registration with a built-in donation area? Donor management software like Razor's Edge can help keep previous donor information for any sort of future events you want to have after. Snowball, AppPay, and QGive allow for text giving options. Text to donate is a form-based mobile fundraising method, and then donors initiate a gift through a text. Text to give is a carrier-based mobile fundraising method, and donors are billed the donation amount on their phone bill. So Snowball is a text to give tool that nonprofits can use, and QGive is a text to donate tool for online giving. You may want to consider gifts in advance of an event, and to have any sort of party bags being able to be picked up at the library, or consider having them mailed. You could limit these gift bags to a certain price point to make them a little more desirable. Things that you could include in your gift bag may be wine glasses with a tagline for your fundraising event. I would encourage the utilization of any local businesses in your gift bag, so things like local treats or candies. Creating a customized face mask is a popular item to include in a gift bag these days, and you can allow for pickup at the library or at another sort of location so that the friends can greet donors and create that kind of opportunity for great customer service with your donors. So there are things that the libraries and the friends should know about doing virtual fundraising events. What you can do virtually is going to be very different than what you were able to do in person. They are two different types of events, so do not try to fit what would have been an in-person event into a fundraising platform. It may not be successful. You're going to want to build connections with publishers to get those really high quality authors at a great price. The St. Paul friends had 4 authors that were pre-recorded, and this is something that they strongly recommend, is reaching out to publishers and getting pre-recorded author videos to make sure that your program can be as engaging as possible. Another note from the St. Paul Friends was that their community did not like sharing video messages. It was something that they thought the community would really support, but it did not work for them. So if that does not work for you, don't sweat it. You're not the only friends group, and just consider an alternative method to getting the story of the library shared. I would encourage you, either your friend's board or friend's president, to create a pre-recorded message about the friends that can be shared periodically throughout the training or the event that you're having. It is advised to keep your virtual fundraising event under 2 hours, but at least 30 minutes. At that 2-hour mark, people really do get virtual meeting fatigue, and you will see a drop off in engagement. Because you want it to be special and fun and not something that takes up a lot of time of the people that are attending your event. And finally, please remember that friends groups in the state of Mississippi are autonomous organizations with their own 501c3 status. Your friends group should be self-sustaining and running its own organization and planning its own fundraising events. And the library staff should really take a step back and make sure that they are not overrunning an event, because it really lessens the engagement for the friends to really step forward and take ownership of that event to help support the library. I want to thank you for attending today's virtual training. If you have any questions or comments related to this training or on Friends of the Library, please give me a call at the Mississippi Library Commission. My contact phone number is 601-432-4154, and you can see my email right here. All right, thank you everybody. Have a wonderful day.